beautiful Wednesday. My name is Judith Mendoza. I am an ordained minister and a witness of Jehovah. And so today I will be considering continuing the consideration of the life of Jesus. And so I thank you for joining me today. And so the last time I had considered that the astrologers had visited Jesus and that this bright star had directed them first to Herod the king, but then they were directed by the star to Jesus, but first stopped by Herod the king. And so we know that that star that came from the east must have been none other than Satan's star. As we know in other scriptures, the Bible tells us that Satan, or someone who opposes, that is what Satan means, a resistor, someone who resists. And so Satan resists God and he opposes God, so that's what the word Satan means. So in reality, anyone can be a Satan if we oppose to God. So no doubt then that the star came from Satan. It directed these astrologers, which the Bible doesn't mention how many were there. It could have been 2, 3, 4, 12, 50, a caravan of them. I don't know. It doesn't mention. So, but it's told that they had knowledge of the prophecies, that the Hebrews were waiting for it to be fulfilled. So they went to Jesus, they paid homage to him as the king that he was going to become for God's kingdom, as he mentioned in the scriptures. And of course, everyone was expecting that Jesus will take over a human kingdom and will rule in the way that humans have been ruling. But of course, we know that God had other purpose in regards to his kingdom through Jesus. So the astrologers went in and they were told after the visit to go on another way. So they did not return to Herod as Herod instructed them to do. And so when you look into history, you find who was this Herod? Well, he was known as Herod the Great. And today I am going to base the scriptures, and I'm going to go to Matthew chapter 2 and then also chapter 13 and also Mark chapter 6. So we are going to find out about this was also prophecy that was going to be fulfilled. And so Herod, King Herod the Great. Herod, and this is according to information that they have found in regards to this man, King Herod the Great, as other also kings that ruled in the time of Jesus and after Jesus, when the apostles were doing the preaching work in Rome. So King Herod was he was intelligent. We can say that. He was a great builder. So he had built many things in the city, and one of these structures that he built was what is known as the Fortress of Masada, which are still visible in Israel. And the reason why he built this is because he was afraid that someone will take his kingdom. Apparently he didn't plan on dying, as we humans do. But anyways, he was a tyrant. He was a cruel man, violent. And so he even had his own sons executed because he did not want anyone to take over his kingdom. So he preferred, according to what they say, that pigs rule over his kingdom instead of his sons. So this is the same man that, and this is why we say and we conclude that this star that these astrologers saw, which astrologers were doing something that God did not approve in the first place. It had to do with astrology, with foretelling the future. And this is something that is still done in our days with the horoscopes. Such things have satanic background. They don't come from God. And so I'm going to read again the scripture in Isaiah 47, because Satan can know the preoccupations humans may have, because he cannot read our thoughts, right? He cannot see our thoughts. Only God can do that. And he cannot tell what is in our heart, but Satan can see the way that we behave. And Satan can take advantage of the troubles that we go through, right? And so I'm going to read from Isaiah 47:13. And he says this: "You are powerless in spite of the advice you get. Let your astrologers come forward and save you, those people who study the stars, who map out the zones of the heavens and tell you from month to month what is going to happen to you. They will be like bits of straw in a fire, and a fire will burn them up. They will not even be able to save themselves. The flames will be too hot for them, not a cozy fire to warm themselves by. That is all the good they will do you. Those astrologers you have consulted all your life, they all will leave you and go their own way, and none will be left to save you." And so we are told this, but then also in other scriptures we know that God condemns foretelling of the future, as if a human can actually tell what another human's future is going to be. And that contradicts free will. Only God can actually have told us what the future is going to be, and it depends on us humans to make that decision in regards to what our future is going to be like. So then, in regards to the star, that directed these magi, these astrologers, they were already working in conjunction with Satan, because whatever they were telling people and foretelling people, it did not come from God. It came from Satan. Satan, who also has the power to make things appear to be in a certain way. And so we have that this man who was violent, who even had his own sons killed because he did not want them to take over his rulership. This is the man that they were directed to. So it was none other than Satan, because this man was ready to kill anyone who was to be a king. And of course, the Hebrews were waiting for a king. So that is what they told him. Now, God warns the astrologers not to go back to Herod and to go back another way. And so they do. They go back another way. Herod is still waiting for these astrologers to come by and tell him where exactly is the location where Jesus is at. And so he has said that he wanted to go and pay homage, obeisance, to do obeisance to Jesus, to worship him. And also he said he wanted to do that, but of course he was not going to do that. That is not what he wanted. So Joseph is given in a dream, he's given a vision, right? And we are going to read. And if you have your Bible, I encourage you to read from your Bible. And I am going to read from the New World Translation. We have at jw.org, we have different translations of the Bible. Also, Bible Hub have different translations of the Bible that you can use. And so it begins on chapter 2 of Matthew in verse 13. And it says, after they had departed, so after the astrologers had departed, look, Jehovah's angel appeared to Joseph in a dream, saying, get up, take the young child and his mother and flee to Egypt, and stay there until I give you word, for Herod is about to search for the young child to kill him. So Joseph got up by night, woke up his family, and urgently, right, took along the young child and the child's mother and went into Egypt. So they escaped by night. And that was just in time. That was just in time because Herod was on the way to search for Jesus. And remember, the astrologers had not gone back to tell him where he was. So on 15, he continues and he says, he stayed there until the death of Herod. This fulfilled what was spoken by Jehovah through his prophet, saying, Out of Egypt I have called my son. And this is according to Hosea 11:1. And that says, I'm going to read it. So Hosea is one of the small books in the Bible. And so Hosea, it says 11:1. And if you have a Bible with references like this one, you can quickly find the prophecies that are being fulfilled. So 11:1 says, When Israel was a boy, I loved him, and out of Egypt I called my son. So this was a reference to Jesus. Of course, we know Israel was representing, or they were as a group, God's people. And so it continues on Matthew chapter 2 verse 16, and it says, Then Herod, seeing that he had been outwitted by the astrologers, flew into a great rage, and he sent out and had all the boys in Bethlehem and in all its districts killed from 2 years of age and under, according to the time that he had carefully ascertained from the astrologers. So this tells us a lot. Just these few scriptures here. If you consider Satan's tactics are going to be the same. And this is the way that Satan has continued to do from the beginning of humans until now, until the end. See how these astrologers that were actually doing something that was not acceptable to God, they were directed to these men who was violent. But then you will maybe ask yourself, well, why will God allow this? And the answer is, remember that God was dealing with humans according to our free will. Since the beginning, Adam and Eve had been given free will. So God can not deal with us as if that doesn't exist. We have free will. It can't be that we have free will and then we don't. And so God cannot go against his own rules either, against his own word. He's not a human to make mistakes. Sometimes we humans, we decide to do something, and then, we think about it and we say, I'm going to change my mind. I'm not going to do this anymore. Or we say something that we don't carefully think about, and then we maybe change our minds and say, I am going to change my mind. And we do. And we don't do whatever we said that we were going to do. And sometimes, even if it's a promise, even if it's a contract, right? And so God does not deal in this way. We are in a case that has been brought up. God is a God of justice. He always deals with us humans because we are intelligent humans. We have the ability to discern, to take in information, to process it, to make calculations, to gain understanding. We have that capacity because God has put it in us in order for us as intelligent creatures to use understanding and make application of these things. And so he has said to Adam, who sinned against God, that the day that he transgressed, the day that he disobeys God, he will die. And so the perfect human, Adam, was no longer perfect. His life, even though he had not died immediately, he had transgressed. So it was as being dead in God's eyes. He died later on. In contrast with not dying, which that was the purpose of humans, to live on forever. And so there was no one at the time, even though that God has said it, but humans, we don't know how it was going to turn out, how Genesis 3:15 was going to be fulfilled, which is the first prophecy. But God had already he already had known how he was going to correct matters. So God decided that he was going to allow Jesus to be put into the womb of Mary so that he could become a human, a perfect human. He was planted in Mary's womb where he grew up to be a human, was born to become a human. And so God had to allow the situation to continue without having complete intervention. Jesus had to be born as a human in order for him to replace the human that had turned out disobedient. And so God had to deal with the situation in the way that humans deal with the situation. So he tells Joseph, get up and take your wife and take your child, or take the child to Egypt and flee there. And so they continue living there for some time. Jesus cannot be turning into an angel or an archangel as he was before. Jesus had to continue living as a human and live amidst and among humans, imperfect humans, in order to fulfill God's word. And so Jehovah, God, as well as Jesus, had to deal with the situation in the midst of imperfect humans in order for him to become a redeemer, or someone who will replace Adam, the man that have brought us into the situation that we are as sinners and dying because of our sins, because we are found sinners. So instead of inheriting life, we inherited sin and death. But through Jesus, that will be reversed. And so, but Jesus is not a man yet. He is a child. So they have to do according to the direction that God is giving them, but God cannot intervene fully, because otherwise then he will be going against his own word. And so they continue living there. But then let me continue. So we know that Herod was a very bad man. He proved to kill these children. And one thing to noting here in regards to the timing, right? Because we tend to see or imagine, and it is important how we see, how we imagine Jesus to be. Because usually we are directed to see Jesus in a manger as a baby, and every year people remember him in a manger as a baby, but that is not the way that Jesus said to be remembered. In the scriptures, Jesus commanded that we remember his death, because that is what is the value. The value of his death, the sacrifice that he did. That is what redeems us. And when you think about also, when we are born, what do we have? Who are we when we are born? We're babies. When we're born, we're just babies with a name and a last name. That's it. It is as we grow older and as we start doing for ourselves that our name means something, right? Let's say, depending on what we decide to do in life, for example, in Jesus' situation, he died. They killed him. He died a perfect human being. So his life could be given in exchange of all of us. It balanced out what was lost through Adam, because Jesus was a perfect human being. So it could be also, right, when we grow up to be adults, and how are we recognized by others? It matters. It matters what we do. It matters the way that we comport ourselves, what we do with our lives, and we can feel proud of what we have done, right? And others can feel proud of us too. Like, for example, depending on whatever career a child who has grown to become a man or a woman have decided to do, his or her parents are very proud of this child, a family member that maybe is the first one to do this or do that. And so they feel proud, and the person himself or herself feel proud of accomplishing something, right? And being honored because of the accomplishments. So it is in the same way. Now Jesus, it is in the same way when it comes to Jesus Christ and his accomplishments. Of course, his accomplishments accomplish even more, because we now have the opportunity to live through Jesus, because it is as He covers us. He becomes our intermediator between us and God. And it is because of that and becoming followers of the Christ that we can have a good standing before God, even though we are imperfect human beings. Of course, it does matter that we become true followers of the Christ, right? So continuing now, and I was going to mention that the age, right? Because of the, we tend to imagine Jesus in a manger, and the situation is put there as if time did not pass. But we know that from the time that Jesus was born, there was many things that Mary and Joseph had to do in order to fulfill the law. Then from that, the astrologers did come to Jesus, but Jesus was not in a manger. Jesus was already an infant, and the times back then, people didn't have any cars to travel distance, so they traveled from different distance, but it took them a long time. It took them a long time for them to get from one place to another. So it must have taken them many months in order for them to first go to Herod, because they were not directed first to Jesus, of course, because this was Satan's star. And so they were directed to Herod, who was a very violent man. And so, which is the tactic that Satan uses. He will continue to use these tactics, Satan. He directed these men who were doing something against God anyways already by being astrologers, as according to the scriptures there in Isaiah 47:13 and other scriptures also. And once these men knew about Jesus, and this is the king that the Jews were waiting for, then of course this was going to make these men angry. And that's what happened, right? It says that he went, and according to the time that he had carefully ascertained from the astrologers. So it had been many months. Maybe Jesus was around 2 years old, he calculated, by the time that he went to maybe a year and a half, maybe 2 years. So he ascertained from the time that they left, the astrologers left from his palace, from his place to Joseph, and from the time that they should have come back to him, but they didn't. So he calculated all the time. He knew because of the location, because he knew that the scriptures had said that, because the astrologers told them that they knew that the Jews were waiting for this. And so he killed all these male children. Complete badness, wicked man. But yet, God had to allow the situation. And he had to utilize, God had to utilize whatever means that were available to Joseph and Mary. So it was for them to flee to Egypt, and they stayed there. And then on 17, Matthew 2:17, chapter 2, verse 17 continues, and he says, "Then was fulfilled what was spoken through Jeremiah the prophet, who said, A voice was heard in Ramah, weeping and much wailing. It was Rachel weeping for her children, and she was unwilling to take comfort, because they are no more. This is in reference to the children that Herod had just assassinated. He had just killed, trying to kill Jesus. And Rachel was the second wife of Jacob. And he is the second wife that he had to work 7 more years for. And so Rachel weeps over her sons because they are descendants. They all are in reality of the same lineage. So that is, but it was prophesied through Jeremiah that this will happen. So it continues on 19, on Matthew 2:19, and it says, when Herod had died, Jehovah's angel appeared in a dream to Joseph in Egypt and said, get up, take the young child and his mother and go into the land of Israel, for those who were seeking the life of the young child are dead. Right? So if you notice, since the beginning in the Bible, it mentions that there is angelic presence here on earth. And the messages have been given to specific humans. It has been given at the time that a prophecy is about to be fulfilled, or that it should be fulfilled in a certain specific time, in a certain specific place, through a certain specific human or humans or group of humans. If you note in the Bible, it is always that way. And then always also the prophecies always back one another. People in the past have foreshadowed what the future will be, what the prophecies are, and how they are going to be fulfilled. This is the way that it's always going to be with God and humans. And it is always with God's purpose, or relating to God's purpose. Because remember, we do have intelligence, we have discernment, we have understanding, we have all these things that we can use in order for us to make and take decisions for ourselves, for our personal lives. So it is not God, it isn't that God is going to for example, someone may say, well, I am going to wait on Jehovah for me to know what to do in this matter or in that matter. Well, it is good that we take into consideration the principles that the Bible gives us. But when it comes to matters that are of a personal importance, we have to use our free will in order for us to do that. And depending on the decisions that we take and make, then it will then be our decision. And the consequences, which will have to be calculated also as we make the decisions. Because we all can make decisions, take decisions, but then there are also good consequences out of the decisions that we make and take, or outcomes. And then there are also bad consequences from our decisions, depending on the decisions that we make and take. So continuing over here, they are told to get up and go. And so on 21 it says, so he got up and took the young child and the child's mother and entered into the land of Israel. So they went back again to Israel. But on 22 it says, but hearing that Archelaus ruled Judea instead of his father Herod, he was afraid to go there. So, moreover, being given divine warning in a dream, he withdrew into the territory of Galilee. So, one of the child of this man, of this bad, wicked man who was violent, very violent, he had the son Archelaus, who was ruling Judea instead of his father Herod. It tells us there. So what happens? Then they go into another area instead. So it says on 22, but hearing that Archelaus ruled Judea instead of his father Herod, he was afraid to go there. Moreover, being given divine warning in a dream, he withdrew into the territory of Galilee. So if you look into a map, you will see that they went further north from where they originally were. And so on 23 says, and he came and settled in a city named Nazareth, in order to fulfill what was spoken through the prophet, he will be called a Nazarene. Right? So Nazarenes were dedicated people to God. And so in the same way, Jesus was going to be dedicated to doing the will of God. And so it was proper for him to go into that city. It was also fulfilling the prophecies. And these prophecies were told through Isaiah, Jeremiah, and in chapter 11:1 in Isaiah, and Jeremiah 23:8, and Zechariah 3:8. And so from there, that is what we know about Jesus so far. They settled there. Everything was to fulfill prophecy. Everything was fulfilling prophecy, everything that they were doing. And of course, they were following the direction of the angels. And so we have here growing up in Nazareth. All the scriptures point out to Jesus growing up in Nazareth and living a life just as any other human. Jesus was in this rather unimportant small city, and as I mentioned, if you look in the map from where they were to where they went, it was way up north, in the Galilee area. And there was a sea in there. The Sea of Galilee was there. So besides, later on in the scriptures mention that Mary, Joseph and Mary did have other children. Did have so he had Jesus had half brothers. And some of them, for example, James, the book of James was half brother of Jesus. And then there were also Joseph, Simon, and Judas, who were not Judas Iscariot, but other named Judas, who were also half brothers of Jesus, born to Joseph and Mary. But they also had girls, Jesus' half sisters. So Jesus at least had 6 younger brothers and sisters. And of course, we know about Elizabeth, who lived near or close to Galilee in Salome. And so Elizabeth, the one who had the son named John the Baptist. And so he grew up in this family setting just as any other family. And it tells us in Matthew 13, Matthew 13, 55, it mentions in regards to that is where we know that Joseph was a carpenter. He had a business of carpentry. Most likely, he also taught Jesus to become a carpenter. In 55 and 56 of Matthew chapter 13, he says, "Is this not the carpenter's son?" So it's referring to Joseph as a carpenter. And then they say, "Is not his mother called Mary? And his brothers James and Joseph and Simon and Judas? And his sisters, are not they all with us? Where then did he get all of this?" Right? This is later on we will consider this, but the reason why I'm mentioning this is because it states where we get the that he was a carpenter, or that was a skill that they had, and that was the business that they had as a family, and or Joseph being the carpenter, and then also Jesus also learning this trade of carpentry. And so we know that that is the way that they support themselves for their living, to pay for their living. And of course, in the other scripture that is mentioned is through Mark chapter 6 verse 3. It says, "This is the carpenter," right? And now they are not referring to Joseph, they are referring to Jesus as the carpenter. So we know that Jesus also participated in this business. And there is a time where Joseph is not mentioned no more. So it could be supposed that Joseph has died. Hello, how are we doing today? Someone has joined. Welcome, you are welcome. And so in Mark chapter 6 verse 3, it says, "This is the carpenter." So they are referring now to Jesus as being the carpenter. So now we know that Jesus most likely took over the business, and being the eldest, most likely he stayed with his family until he turned 29 years old, or about 30 years old. And then we know that he started the ministry after getting baptized. But the law required that children stay with their family to help them out. And Jesus did that. It shows that he did that. So in this scripture is mentioned, this is the carpenter, the son of Mary and the brother of James, Joseph, Judas, and Simon, is it not? And his sisters are here with us, are they not? So they began to stumble because of him. But Jesus said to them, a prophet is not without honor except in his home territory and among his relatives and in his own house. So, and this I will consider later on, but the reason is that they are saying this is a carpenter. This man, they are referring now to Jesus. They are referring to him as, they know him as just being a man who has a business, he's a carpenter, and now Jesus is saying that he is the Messiah, that he is the Christ. So they are stumbled. And that is why Jesus tells them that a prophet is not without honor except in his own home, in his own territory, and among his relatives. Meaning that, your own family member will doubt that maybe you can do this or you can do that, or that you have become this or you have become that, or that you even have some certain skills and talents that maybe they don't see it because you're you're their relative. So that is what he was pointing out. But the reason why the scripture, I am mentioning this scripture, is to show that what is spoken in regards to the life of Jesus from the time when they returned to Egypt. They settle in Nazareth. They stay there. Jesus becomes a carpenter just like Joseph. And there is a point where Joseph is not mentioned anymore. So most likely he died. And Jesus is the one who takes over. And he fulfilled the law because he stays with the family until the legal time for him to leave, that he can be considered not an adult, because he was considered an adult already, right? But he had the responsibility to help the family for some time before he could take in independence from the parents. So most likely, as it is mentioned in the law, because Mary and Joseph were spiritual people, so they were instructed for the parents in Deuteronomy chapter 6, and it starts on verse 6, and it tells this to the Israelites. And I'm going to start from verse 4. It says, listen, O Israel, Jehovah our God is one Jehovah. You must love Jehovah your God with all your heart and all your soul and all your strength. These words that I am commanding you today must be on your heart. So this is what God is telling to the parents. And of course, he tells this through the guidance of Moses. And so he tells them on Deuteronomy chapter 6 verse 7, he says, and you must inculcate them, the words, the teachings of God. You must inculcate them in your sons and speak of them when you sit in your house. And of course, this includes also the daughters. So you and your sons and daughters, and speak of them when you sit in your home, in your house, and when you walk on the road, and when you lie down, and when you get up. Tie them as a reminder on your hand, and they must be like a handband on your forehead. Write them on your doorpost of your house and on your gates. So Jehovah God wants the Israelites to pass on these instructions from God. and they must do this at all times. At all times, when they walk on the road, when they are sitting down for dinner time or breakfast, when they go to sleep, when they get up. So they have to be concentrating in teaching their children to know God, the only true God. And so Jesus was instructed most likely by Joseph and Mary in these ways. We know from what we read in the scriptures that according to Luke 4:16, that according to his custom, Jesus, according to his custom, on the Sabbath day, he went to the synagogue and he will read from the scrolls. So, as a human being, remember, these were things that were given through angels. The scriptures are composed of prophecies, of God's purpose, of messages that were sent through angels to the humans, to the prophets, so they could prophesy. This happened all before Jesus was born, and most likely some of it must have been Jesus giving these messages to these prophets to read. Not to read, but not to just read, but to write it, and then also to read from it. So Jesus didn't say, well, I was part of this. We know that he was obedient. As a teenager, he was obedient. It doesn't speak much in regards to Jesus' life until when he begins to fulfill the prophecies regarding the preaching and teaching work, regarding the ministry, which is the way that God now has purpose in order to serve as means of salvation to humans. But and also we know that Jesus knew that he was he was the Son of God, because Mary had told him these things. Mary and Joseph most likely had told them in regards to all the things that had happened when he was a baby, when he was visited by the angels, or they were visited by the angels. Joseph was visited by angels, Mary was visited by an angel, and they continue to have guidance through these angels that God has sent. And he knew that he had a purpose, that he what had been told to Mary, he knew these things, but he didn't have full knowledge of his purpose until he got baptized. God spoke from heaven, and then he retired to the wilderness and spent there 40 days and 40 nights, which Moses had foreshadowed. And so then spending time with his father, his heavenly father, knowing that he is this human, but that he was also the archangel Michael in heaven, who now has been commissioned to the earth and to continue to fulfill prophecy. So again, this is something that was foreshadowed by Abraham and Isaac, as we know that God had asked Abraham to take Isaac and to give him as a sacrifice. And of course, God told him later on not to do it. But it foreshadowed what God was going to do. So prophecy confirms what prophecy is and what God has spoken. And it continues to be confirmed through other prophecies and through other means in different times. And so we will continue to have this. We will continue to have the same way God will continue to deal with us, because we do have free will, and so God will deal with us through the same means that he has done in the past. Of course, after Armageddon, it's not going to be regarding our salvation, but in order for us to continue living under God's subjection. And so next week I will continue the consideration of the scriptures, and it's going to be based on Luke chapter 2, right? Chapter 2 is a long chapter, so it will be chapter 2, verses 40 to 52. And when Jesus is 12 years of age, which is the next time that we know about Jesus, right? So we know when he was a baby, he was about 2 years old. They flee to Egypt, and they come back. They settle in Nazareth, but they all had to travel to Jerusalem. Anyone and everyone who wanted to worship Jehovah God had to travel from wherever they were. They had to travel to Jerusalem to give worship. And so they were in Nazareth, and they had to travel there. And so that will conclude the consideration in regards to Jesus' life up to that time. So that will be for next week. And so I thank you for joining me today. And tomorrow I will be talking in regards to the book of Revelation. And so it is going to be another interesting session, another interesting topic in regards to how God is continuing to reveal what will happen to the future, and how prophecy has been fulfilled, how prophecy is being fulfilled now, and how it will continue to be fulfilled. And so on Wednesdays, Thursdays, and Fridays, I have a general topic. So that is the time that I have set out for spiritual matters, right? So we all should set out some time for spiritual matters. And so if you want to have a personal study of the Bible online, you can visit jw.org. Or if you want a Bible study that you want to study with another human, we are available online. So whatever means that you have through Zoom, FaceTime, Messenger, or through the telephone, we are conducting Bible studies, right? So the goal is for us to become followers of the Christ in the manner that the Christ has set for us to do. And so I thank you for joining me today. And my name is Judith Mendoza. I am an ordained minister and a witness of Jehovah. I hope you have a beautiful day today. Thank you for joining.